What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. In today's video, I'm super excited to be building a stunning all-white gaming PC build that is going to be amazing for 1440p and 4K gaming. A build assembled inside of a brand new case from APNX that looks to do things a little differently, and one that's going to provide some great performance at a price point that hopefully won't break the bank. Let's do this. I'm going to walk you guys through the parts as we go, explaining the choices, giving some alternative recommendations, and putting the build together. But first, I want to take a look at the APNX V2, a brand new chassis that I first checked out at Computex earlier this year. And here it is. Now, it's not a particularly small thing, but I've also seen larger cases too. And this is APNX's second case, following on from their V1. And this thing looks to me a little bit more interesting. So here we are. You can see they've gone full fish tank on this thing. We've got a glass panel at the top, a glass panel on the side, and a glass panel on the front, with this cool angled piece here, which actually supports and connects those three glass panels together. Now, inside the case, we've got your, I was going to say standard dual chamber design, but that actually wouldn't be strictly true. And the reason for that is that the dual chamber doesn't go the full width of the case. Instead, the motherboard tray is sort of offset from the front, behind giving room for the power supply, any drives and cable management. And then around the side and the top of the case, we have open air intake for fans. The idea here is to try and offset one of the biggest problems with dual chamber cases, which is lack of airflow through this front glass panel. Now, we also get 3 included fans at the bottom here. I believe these are all RGB. These are all in intakes. They're going to pull air into the case. The only thing I need to try and figure out is what orientation my other fans are going to be in today. Presumably, we're going to go for additional intake here and then maybe exhaust at the top and exhaust at the back. By default, you get a 140mm ARGB fan at the rear, but you can actually take this out and swap it instead for 220mm, which can help again additionally with airflow. The back of the case is basically just a big cheese grater, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's fully toolless too. And here you can see not only the built-in ARGB fan hub, that's a really nice touch, with actually, I think, 2 SATA connections, but also how the design works. So again, these fans here, the motherboard tray. Now, there is some overlap between where the fans mount and where the motherboard tray is, so we'll need to see what impact that has on airflow. And I'm also keen to check out how easy it's going to be to get an all-in-one liquid cooler into this case. A couple of cool other features too. We've got an integrated GPU support bracket, which you can actually adjust and angle in various different ways. That's a nice touch. And we do have reverse connect motherboard support, and I've not seen a brand before actually put covers on them. I think that's basically, are these toolless? I think so. To make the case look a little bit better and a little bit less holy. Is that the word? Not holy as in like the church, holy as in like it's got holes. Yeah, okay. I think you get the point. So there's the case. What about the other components? Well, what better way to take a look at these than to start putting this system together? Now, I'm going to begin by installing as many parts as possible onto the motherboard. Now, specifically, I've gone for this, the MSI B850 Edge TI Wi-Fi. You can see it fits with the white aesthetic I'm looking for in today's system. There are a few black accents, the CPU cooler mounting brackets and the RAM DIMMs being the most obvious. Obviously, some of our GPU connectors and stuff will be hidden later. It's a really solid motherboard that sticks with the more affordable B850 chipset, but does give you quite a good set of features. You get things like a Q-code display for easy debugging, you get MSI's nice toolless GPU latch, you get good CPU power delivery with plenty of VRM power phases for high-end processors, and if we take a spin round to the rear I/O of the motherboard, it is more trimmed down compared to its X870 counterparts, but offers up more than the standard B850 board when it comes to USB ports, high-end connectivity, 5GB Ethernet, Wi-Fi 7, you guys get the picture. Now onto the motherboard, I'm going to be installing a slightly interesting and maybe weird looking CPU choice. I've gone for the last generation 7800X3D. Now James, you've gone for a brand new case, a brand new chipset motherboard. Why? Why? Honestly, this thing is a CPU you should not overlook. I've been talking about this in loads of my TikToks and YouTube shorts recently. It basically gives you 9800X3D performance minus 10 or 15% at a price that is often cheaper than some of the other Ryzen current gen CPUs. It's going to give you better gaming performance by a a long way than the likes of a 96 or 9700X from the current generation, and obviously gives us a bit of cost save. You really don't need the 9800X 3D unless you're going for a 5080, 5090, and while it's nice to have, this is a great way of keeping the build on budget while not sacrificing performance. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have seen me install a CPU a million times, but if you haven't, here we go again. Gonna go ahead and just lift up the arm on our CPU socket, little something like so, pull up the cover, and then drop the Ryzen chip into place. The little triangle is gonna line up with this top left corner, and then the socket cover is gonna return down. Keep the black plastic safe in case you ever need it a bit later. As far as RAM goes today, I've gone for this G.Skill kit. This is their Trident Z5 Neo RGB. I'm a sucker for G.Skill memory. I think it looks so good. The only complaint I have, and it's kind of the same with the motherboard, I'd love them to ditch the black accent strip. I just don't really know why we need it. Not for all white builds, but again, I think it's gonna look really rather nice, and it's a bit more, how do I say, visually interesting than what you'll find from the likes of Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro. So just line up the RAM DIMM, line up the notch, pull back the clips, and slide the two DIMMs into place in the second and fourth slots. Next up is the M.2 drive, and this is an area where I have gone maybe a little bit cheaper than I needed to, but again, if this is a gaming build and that's all you're really bothered about, TeamGroup's MP44L is going to be more than fast enough. You can see we reviewed this drive over on our website, GeekaWhat.com, which I'll link in the cards now, and we're really, really impressed with it. Now, in terms of which slot I'm going to install it into, it's going to be the top slot, and it's toolless, so all you do is just push this little notch on the end, nicely done, slide the SSD into place, and just push it over that little clip. I'm then going to go ahead and return the heatsink on, like so, and if you just push it down, it clicks in, and that really is all there is to it. You can even lift the motherboard up once it's completely in, just to check that we're all good. Now, in terms of the other prep we can do at this stage, I think I'm gonna check out the CPU cooler, because it might be that we can actually do some prep with this mounting hardware here. It might also be that we can't, but it doesn't hurt to check. Now, sticking with the white theme on today's build, I actually wanted to give this a go, MSI's Coreliquid P13. The case choice is super clean. Like, it's really clean lines, it's really kind of minimalist in many respects. And this MSI cooler has something pretty interesting on that I think will help the build tie together nicely, which is this cover over the mounting hardware. Let's open up the box, and inside, yeah, we're gonna find a few things. We're gonna find primarily the cooler itself. Now you can see here, MSI's P13 actually has these really nice braided-y sleeved tubes. That's pretty clever. And then inside, we also have our fans and our cables. Now these cables look surprisingly messy. There we go. But the good news is that we actually don't have any visible cables from the pump itself. That's because they actually go through the rubber ends of these tubes, which feel very satisfying, and actually then come out, and that's why there's so many cables on the radiator. Now, the only thing I may do is I may swap these fans out, potentially for some matching APNX fans, but let's see how we get on and see what we think. The real reason I've got the cooler out, though, is I want to check the mounting hardware, and for that, I'm going to need to consult the manual. Where's the manual? I've got 2 health and safety booklets and 2 shout-out review cards. But no manual. Ah, yes, there we go. User manual, you've got to scan a QR code, which I actually don't love, if I'm being honest. Right, scan. Do you need more help? Yes. Register now for technical support. Oh, do you click it? That would have created an account. It's time for the return of... You guys know what's coming. MSI, if you're gonna do this like saving the planet business by getting rid of the manual, then maybe don't give me 4 bits of paper that I don't need, and instead make it so that when I scan the bloody QR code, I get the manual, not some like... Now, maybe, is this not out yet? Is that maybe what the... Is this because it's support? Yes, I need support. I don't want to register. Drivers and downloads, no. Manual and document, manual. Maybe this is a pre-release QR code and they just hadn't like QR'd the QR code, but that was annoying. The good news is we need to remove the stock mounting hardware and then in its place add this AMD hardware instead that's MSI specific. Yeah, these 2 steps and then the cooler goes on. Probably didn't need the manual for that, but you know. The next step, now that I've completed a little bit of prep for the cooler, is to pop the motherboard into the case. Now taking a look, and all the standoffs are in the right locations. APNX have got some good stuff right here. The center standoff is raised, as is the top center standoff too. There is some tape here, which I'm gonna definitely need to pull off, more than likely just to protect the case in shipping, before then sliding the motherboard into place. A little something like so. The motherboard installation screws are also really handily labelled. Something which you can't take for granted and does make life a bit easier. So 3 screws at the top, 3 along the middle and 3 down the bottom to get the board secured into place. Let's do the power supply first, which is this, the MSI A850L GL PCI 5. I actually didn't want to use an MSI unit for the power supply. I thought I'd mix it up a little bit. And then I went on to Amazon, went on to Newegg, was looking at what the best 850 watt PSUs were, and this consistently came up top for the white color scheme. So you can see it is ATX 3.1 and PCI Gen 5.1, and I believe when we open it up, it should have the all-white cables that we require for today's build. Yes, it does. Now, they have got black ends on them, which I think is going to look fine. If it doesn't, I'll put some cable extensions in, but I think it's going to be fine. It's also got the Gen 5 power connector that we need as well. Inside the box, we also have another MSI shout-out. Thankfully, no manual is required on this occasion. And I'm going to go ahead and plug into the power supply a motherboard power connector. So we've got one just up here at the top, and the other half of it as well is 2 halves on the power supply side. Got the PCI Generation 5 power connector, so that goes not quite at the top, but not a million miles away. And then to round off, a couple of CPU power cables, and also our SATA power to actually give the ARGB hub that's integrated the power that it needs. Power supply slides into the top of the case, which is nice and simple, and just lines up with the screw holes at the back. That's the wrong way. We need the fan, of course, pulling air in from the rear of the case. So don't get that wrong, and then go ahead and screw it in with those 4 screws just there. Again, these come in a nice and easily labeled bag, which is great to see. First thing I'm going to wire up is the motherboard power cable. So good first test of this case's cable management. Then going to return the top panel into place, which just hinges over this little bracket. And then, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. I quite like that design. That's clever. No, hang on a minute. No, I'm not going to put it back on. I'm going to put the radiator in first, actually. And this is now a good time to try and figure this situation out, because I've not built in a case where you mount the radiator quite like this before. Now, as mentioned, I am going to swap the fans out, but first I need to decide on a location for the rad. I'm thinking maybe the top of the case. Will it fit? Okay, it fits. And it looks a bit different, but I think once the cables are managed, I actually think I quite like it. Yeah, I think this makes sense. I think the top of the build does look the most feasible. But I'm going to swap these fans out for some which match the APNX theme better. These are standard APNX fans in a standard orientation, so we're going to exhaust through the radiator and out the back of the case. Houston, we have a problem, or you could call it a dilemma. Now, the 2 options are, we put the radiator on the side here and the tube run looks a bit better. However, it's less ideal and it means I need to change the fans to reverse blade fans, or we do this, where we put the radiator at the top, which I think looks nicer, but our tubes are a bit more of a stretch because they're going to look like that. I'm thinking we're going to go for this orientation, so leave it with me to screw that in, tidy these cables up, and I'm also going to put the other intake fans at the bottom and, of course, add our exhaust 120mm pair at the back of the case as well. Okay, so we're making some progress. The only thing I'm not sure about is there's some cable management I need to try and do up here, which is a bit tricky, and then these are my reverse blade fans, which I've actually put in the wrong way around, so they will need to be corrected too. I've put the reverse blade fans in the... Yeah, anyway, I'll sort that out later. How have I even managed that? I'm now going to return this cover back into place, which is hopefully going to make some of these cables and stuff look a little bit tidier. So that slides on like that. Good stuff. And then it clicks onto here. Yeah, good. The design still works well. And then I've got this thumb screw, which is a bit more of a challenge, but I think if I take my watch off, I can get it in. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, that's a nightmare. How am I supposed to get that in? Yeah, I did it. Woo! Okie dokie, so that is in. It wasn't actually too difficult. And the next and final step of the build today, before doing a little bit more maybe cable management, neatening things up at the end, is the GPU. And I have lost it. Here it is. I have gone for this, the MSI RTX 5070 Ti in white. Now, you might be thinking, James, what about the 9070 XT? We featured a white power color design before, which looks also pretty good. I think this is a slightly nicer looking card. The 9070 XT's problem is price and availability. In order to find a white 9070 XT on Amazon, on Newegg at the time of filming, particularly over in the US, was very difficult. The UK availability is much better. So in the UK, it's probably more a case of which brand you prefer and which model. In terms of performance, they're quite similar. You can see on screen now, there are games where the 5070 Ti is worse and games where it performs better. Again, the MSRPs look vastly different, but real world pricing on these cards is actually fairly similar. Now this is completely box fresh, which means, and this doesn't get to happen very often, I get all of the peels. This is like wrapped like a Christmas present. Yeah, look at that. Whew, that is one good looking white GPU. And again, there are accents of black on here, which will help to tie in the build today. Now, I'm gonna line this up over the top slot to just see which of our PCI lanes need removing. And it's also dawned on me that that GPU support bracket, while handy, is gonna be in the wrong location. So I'm also gonna go ahead and shift this down while also removing the second and third brackets, which are in the way for the GPU installation. And then making sure the PCI latch is unlocked, I'm gonna go ahead and slide the graphics card into place. We are lined up okay, bit of pressure. Good, I think we're in. And then I'm gonna return the lock switch in, and you can tell then if I pull the card out, it's not gonna release. That's working all good. And then screw the GPU into place. And obviously the advantage of these 3 fans at the bottom is we're gonna have loads of room for fresh airflow in this system, and hopefully nice and low GPU temperatures. Gonna wrap up by fishing the power supply cable out for the GPU, and of course with the GPU support brackets. And there we have it, something a little bit different. And I am really excited to see what this thing looks like when it's turned on. The power button is up here at the front. Oh, that's a noise, that's a noise. It looks good, but I think my cable management might need some work. I'll see you in a second. So there we have it, a build that looks really interesting and is of a kind of design, layout and setup that you're just not really used to seeing from other cases. What do you guys think? Now in terms of performance, this build stacks up really, really well. We tested here predominantly at 4K, but with a bit of 1440p and 1080p too. A summary of the results that we gathered can be found on your screen now, with virtually all of those numbers, as I say, at that top resolution, apart from Doom the Dark Ages, which we tested at 1440p, and Fortnite, which we always test at 1080p competitive settings. Now let's start off, shall we, with Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 Zombies. Now this is a really interesting result for me, as at 4K high you might expect the 5070 Ti to struggle. But oh no, we actually managed to exceed more than 140 frames per second on average, not bad. And moving through into titles like F1 2025, again at that top resolution, sees yet more great results. At the 4K ultra high preset here, the build pulled in 135 FPS on average, not bad. And even in the likes of Cyberpunk, which are a pretty difficult game to run even by modern standards, again running at 4K high settings, still sees this build pull in over 100 FPS with 115 frames per second on average. Finally, also going to look at Doom the Dark Ages. This was a game we had to tune the resolution down a little bit from the top end 4K to the lower 1440p to keep frame rates in the right window, and here the system pulled in a very strong 95 FPS on average. I also used MSI's lovely white colour match QD OLED monitor to test this build out. This is a gorgeous panel that runs at that top 4K resolution and made for a really nice companion to this build in general. What do you guys think of the hardware that I used? What do you think of the colour scheme? What do you think of APNX's brand new V2 case? I've not actually seen a case do it quite like this, but do you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.